Hello, this is Bill Bullard with RCAF USA, the voice of the independent cattle producer in the United States of America. Well, stopping a federal agency from violating the U.S. Constitution is not a trivial thing. And while citizens can debate whether the federal beef checkoff program is doing more good than harm or doing more harm than good, everyone should agree that the baseline must be that all federal programs, including the federal beef checkoff program, must be in full compliance with our U.S. Constitution. Now, a federal district court recently ruled that RCAF USA had prevailed in its constitutional challenge against the beef checkoff program, and it awarded RCAF USA over $150,000 in legal fees and costs. RCAF USA argued in that case, which we filed in 2016, that the U.S. Department of Agriculture had been violating the U.S. Constitution for decades by imposing a mandatory federal tax on U.S. cattle producers and then allowing that tax to be used to subsidize the private speech of private corporations. Now, both the federal district court and the appellate court agreed that a preliminary injunction to temporarily stop the USDA's alleged constitutional violation was the correct action to take, given the seriousness of the alleged violation, as well as the likelihood that RCAF USA would prevail on the merits of its case. And so in 2017, RCAF USA was granted a preliminary injunction. Now, lawsuits take a long time, and they can take many twists and turns, so it's important to focus on the outcome. In other words, a lawsuit is successful when the outcome corrects the problem that precipitated the lawsuit in the first place. And in our constitutional challenge against the USDA over the beef checkoff program, the court determined that RCAF USA achieved the outcome it sought. That was an end to USDA's allegedly unconstitutional government-compelled subsidy of speech. Now, that outcome did not come by way of a final court order. Instead, it came about because the USDA likely knew it was going to lose the case unless it substantially changed the way it had been operating the beef checkoff program for decades. And the way USDA attempted to change its beef checkoff operations was by taking steps to assume full control over the speech funded by the federal tax. And it convinced the court that because USDA began controlling the speech by way of contracts, known as memorandums of understanding, which were executed after RCAF USA had filed its lawsuit, the speech should no longer be considered private speech, for which there are constitutional protections. Instead, the USDA contended that the speech should now be labeled as government speech, which is not subject to the constitutional protections, and the federal district court agreed with USDA on that issue. But the court made clear that USDA had been violating the Constitution for a long time. It stated in its order that USDA should have known that the program that RCAF USA challenged was unconstitutional. It also said that USDA's conduct before the litigation could not be substantially justified, and that its position in the lawsuit itself lacked a reasonable basis in law and was therefore not substantially justified. So in this checkoff lawsuit, RCAF USA had done what very few organizations have done. We have protected the constitutional rights of our cattle-producing members by putting a halt to USDA's long-running violation of our U.S. Constitution. But the case is not yet over. We have appealed the district court's ruling that the MOUs are sufficient to cure such a long-running and serious violation of the Constitution, and we expect a hearing on our appeal later this year. In addition, we're challenging the legality of the MOUs in yet another district court, where we've alleged that USDA lacks the legal authority to enter into the very MOUs that the court had determined was adequate to cure the constitutional violation. Meanwhile, as these two lawsuits make their way through the judicial system, independent U.S. cattle producers can take the bull by the horns by signing a petition giving them the right to hold a producer referendum on the 35-year-old beef checkoff program. And when we get the required number of petition signers, U.S. cattle producers, for the first time in 35 years, will be able to vote on whether to keep the beef checkoff program as it currently exists. And we urge every cattle producer to join with their fellow cattle producers by going to www.checkoffvote.com. And that's all one word, www.checkoffvote.com, to sign the petition. It is certainly time for cattle producers to regain control of their industry. And this is the best first step to do it. And also, please go to our website at www.r-cafusa.com to join with us so we become strong enough to direct your U.S. cattle industry towards a more profitable and prosperous future. With that, thank you and have a productive week. Goodbye.